Hello, and welcome to Asase Ba, a podcast that honors oral tradition and shines the light on Ghanaian stories that are often untold or silenced. I'm your host, Michelle, and welcome to the season 5 finale of Asase Ba. If you haven't already, go back and listen to the other 4 episodes. They feature conversations about queer identities, diasporic connection, and African indigenous knowledge systems. They're great episodes, and I'm really proud of them, so go check them out if you haven't already, and then come back to this one. Okay, so today's episode is a solo one, and I'm going to be talking all about traditional Akan spirituality. But before I get into that, if you've been enjoying this podcast, if you've enjoyed season 5 and something has really resonated with you, you were engaged, you learned something, you can support the podcast. And you can do so in several ways. The first way is by sharing. Asase Ba is on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at asasebapod. You can support by engaging, posting on your Insta stories, sharing on WhatsApp, telling your family, your friends, your network, your community to listen, and just like engaging with the podcast and sharing your feedback and using the hashtag asasebapod. So that's ASASE BAPOD on social media so that I can see it and others can see it as well. Another way to support the podcast is by visiting asasebapod.com, which is the official website. And you can go there for curated resources on queer identities, spirituality, and cultural work. And you're also welcome to submit resources there as well. And it may just appear on the website. Another way to support, bringing you different options. You can support in all these ways or, choose what works best for you. But another way to support Asase Ba is through monetary donations. I'm the sole producer, editor, planner, interviewer, graphic designer, doer of all the things, So if you want to support me as an indie creator, and if you're able to, you can donate via email transfer for those in Canada. And if you're outside of Canada, you can donate via PayPal. And the email for that is asasebapod@gmail.com. So that's ASASEBAPOD@gmail.com. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Now on to this episode. Okay, so as I hinted at, or outright said, there was no hinting, I mentioned it. Today I'm going to be talking about traditional Akan spirituality. And before I get into it, I just wanted to kind of, give you some disclaimers. When you watch YouTube videos and then I watch a lot of YouTube essays and then there is like a 1-minute disclaimer. Maybe this won't be a minute, maybe it will, but just some things to know before I dive into the topic. So there are many different groups among the Akan ethnic group, as we know, so there may be nuances and different ways of practicing these traditions. There may also be slight variations in meanings and names across groups, and this is more so an introduction to Akan spirituality, the traditional spirituality, so it's not going to give you a detailed play-by-play of everything, right? Still learning, and this involved kind of like research and stuff like that. So I don't know everything. So this is going to be more so an introduction, right? Also, something to note, we don't separate religion and culture in our traditions. And that's basically like most African cultures. Like, we don't really separate religion and culture. It's seen as a way of life, right? Like, spirituality is seen as a way of life and like a continuum, right? So some of these things that I'm going to be talking about, you may recognize as part of Akan customs and traditions if you are an Akan, and not think of it as part of our traditional spirituality, but it actually is because everything is holistic, which is something that I mentioned season 5, episode 1. So yeah. Anyway, the sources. So me, as an Akan, Asante to be specific. I also asked relatives and elders, read some books, articles, watch a lot of YouTube videos, and all my sources and references that, you can access online or via books, etc., are in the episode notes. So make sure to check that out to learn more. Okay, so now let's dive in. I'm going to start off with the creator. And so in Akan spirituality, the creator goes by many different names. You may recognize these names. If you're Akan, they're typically used to refer to God in Abrahamic religions. I know they are in Christianity, but they are distinct and not the same as the Christian God. So these names are, Adomankuma, Erade, Nyame, Tradiampon, Nyankopon. And I believe like the most popular one that I hear and that a lot of us, I think, that are very familiar with is Nyankopon and Onyame. And, we have variations in these names because they all describe aspects and characteristics of the creator. So, for example, Adomankuma, which I just mentioned, goes with the name Oboadia. So, Adomankuma Oboadia. So that means eternal creator. Tradiampon describes how reliable and dependable the creator is. And Nyame really describes how we see the creator as like one great one, the great one. I'm going to probably use like Adomankuma because although it's not used as often in this day and age, is a word that's used to describe, eternal creator. So I'm just going to use that. So Adomankuma is everywhere all at once. Adomankuma is viewed as androgynous, both masculine and feminine, yet neither. And they possess both masculine and feminine qualities, but they also go beyond our conception of masculine and feminine, or just our conception of gender, of male, female. And this is something that I talked about in season 3 of Asase Ba, if you want to go listen to that. But Adomankuma created the earth, the sky, the rivers, plants, animals, spirits of the water, rocks, humans, and the Abosom, which are the deities that take care of humans. So that's Adomankuma, Nyankopon, Erade, that's a description of the creator. And now, very close to Adomankuma in terms of when we're like pouring libations, you'll hear people refer to Adomankuma or Nyankopon, and then you'll hear Asase Yaa. And so Asase Yaa or Asase Afua, which is commonly the name Infante, is the physical manifestation of the creator. And this speaks to the feminine aspect of the creator, the creator in creation, right? And so I've seen some other concepts in regards to Asase Yaa or Asase Afua. So some see her as a separate entity from Adomankuma. And I personally like the idea that she's Adomankuma or Nyame in creation, that she's a physical manifestation. I like that idea, but I understand that there may be different interpretations across cultures and across different people, but that makes a lot of sense to me personally. And so the names and the appellations for her basically describe her as a mother, an elder, a caring mother. So, we have Obatai, Abrewa. So those are kind of different features and aspects of Asase Yaa. And, we came from her and we all return to her when we pass. she's seen as a spirit, but not regarded as an Abosom. And they are seen as Mother Earth, who receives the dead back into her womb. And in some Akan societies, her sacred day is Thursday, and in others, it is Friday. So on each of these days, no one can work on the land, and breaking this is a taboo, right? And it can have some serious consequences. So for example, you may become lost in the woods or be picked up by Mmoatia, which I will get into later on. And Mmoatia are basically spiritual creatures that live deep in the forest. I'll come back to that later. And so with Asaase Yaa, offerings and sacrifices are made to her to help plants grow, to ward off misfortunes that may befall farmers. And so traditionally, before planting anything, traditional Akan farmers sprinkle the blood of sacred fowl on the land. And they also cook different foods that they then scatter in 4 directions. So north, south, east, west, as another offering to Asaase Yaa. And so also before digging any grave, people pour a libation, and the purpose of the libation is to formally request Asaase Yaa's permission to dig a grave so that one of her children, aka us, can be buried in her womb. And another feature that I find very interesting about Asaase Yaa is, she's known as the upholder of truth. So people will put soil on their tongues to swear that they're telling the truth. Okay, so now let's talk about the Abosom, or Abosom singular. So the Abosom describe deities that are sent to earth to work on behalf of Adumankuma. And the Bosom, they're created by Adumankuma, and they are everywhere. And their purpose is to fulfill a specific function or task. And they have powers. There are major ones and there are smaller spirits all over Ghana. So they're known as Nyame Abrafo or Nyame Achiame, meaning Adumankuma's executor of justice or spokesperson, respectively. The Abosom can be any gender as well, and in many cases, they don't have to be the same gender as the person they work with. And there are clan levels, traditional levels, family levels, etc. And Abosom are usually attached to towns, villages, or like water bodies. And the purpose is like when your community or family is going through difficulties, you consult an Abosom, right? And they communicate with humans from time to time by possessing or like mounting a trained human being. So an Akan. One thing I found really interesting while doing my research is that if an Abosom is not effective, they are abandoned by practitioners for another Abosom. And if they are powerful, people see them as worthy of worship. So I found that really interesting. The main type of Abosom, or a category of Abosom, is the Tete Abosom, which are ancient Abosom, and they're often protector spirits. And they've been with Akan people, different Akan groups since the beginning. And they're usually associated with natural elements in society. So usually bodies of water, rocks, mountains, etc. And their work is directed towards protecting human communities from danger and misfortune, Lucio. So they communicate with human beings and Adumankuma, and so they function as an intermediary. And there are said to be hundreds of them, but it's kind of hard to count because they give birth, in a way, to other Abosom all the time. And so, as I said, there's like a state level, clan level, etc. And oftentimes they're associated with professions such as hunting, fishing, farming, etc. I'm going to name a few popular ones. So one, there's Tano or Takora. And Tano is one of the oldest and most revered Abosom. So they're a state Abosom with lots of historical significance, especially for the Buno people and Asante people. And so they exist in a body of water called Tana River, and also the Tana Sacred Grove. And Tana is located or resides rather in Techimai in the Brahafo region. Another really popular abosom is Bosomche, and it's represented by Lake Bosomche, which is in the Ashanti region. And the two words bosom and otre, that's kind of like the root word. So bosom meaning deity and otre meaning antelope. And there's this really interesting story and that has been passed down about the, I guess, etymology or the origin rather of Bosomche. So if you have a chance to look that up, I would urge you to do so. It's very interesting. Tano as well. All right, so another very popular abosom is Bosompo, which is the abosom of the sea, right? And it's the protecting deity for fishing. Tuesdays are a sacred day, so nobody fishes on that day. And so when the sea is rough, not enough fish is caught, and there's erosion, it's said that Bosompo is angry. And so Bosompo is very, very important to especially folks living in the coastal area where the sea is. So another example of Tete Bosom is Nana Bruku. And Nana Bruku is located in the eastern region in Kwewutafo. And they reside in a rock and they're known as the protecting deity of the Kwewu people. And so, as I mentioned earlier, there are many, many more. And there are a lot of abosom within different regions or towns or villages that are not necessarily Tete abosom, but are very well known and popular amongst people. Okay, so sumai is another word that I encountered a lot when watching like different YouTube videos. And it seems like it's used interchangeably with the word abosom. But upon my research, upon further investigation, there seems to be a distinction. So sumai usually refers to objects or mixtures that are for protection. And there are spiritual entities that activate them. And that's where like the power, the tumi comes from. And abosom, such as the Titi abosom I mentioned earlier, are usually considered larger or more powerful than sumai. Okay, so we've talked about Dumankuma, we've talked about Asaase Yaa, we've talked about abosom, and now I'm going to be talking about another group of spiritual creatures, and they are called Mmoatia. They are about 12 inches in height, and some say their feet point backwards. Some say their feet actually does not point backwards, and that's like a myth. But I've seen and heard both just watching like YouTube videos and like reading articles and stuff. And so Mmoatia live deep in the forests and they're invisible to human beings, like regular people, and they can take on many forms. So they use a whistle language to communicate with each other and to human beings. They love bananas. They have families and lives and whole societies. And something that's very distinct about Mmoatia is they're very, very good at herbal medicine. And some Mmoatia work with a particular bosom. And also, Mmoatia can be known as tricksters. So I've read stories and watched videos where people relate their accounts of being taken by Mmoatia into the forest and living there for years. And some come out with all this herbal knowledge. So it's interesting, I guess. Yeah, like they usually leave some clues that they've taken someone. Watch like a YouTube video on that. Like people will come and they'll tell their whole story and they come and they're very, very knowledgeable about like herbs. So now let's talk about Akomfo. And Akomfo are diviners, priestesses, and priests. The singular term is Akomfo, or people will use Komfo before the person's name. So example, Komfo Anoche, Komfo Anoche, who commanded the golden stool down from above. Very important figure, person in Asante culture. So the word akomfo comes from the word akom, which means, when I looked it up, I saw a couple different definitions on what the word akom could mean. I saw trance. So like imagine, being mounted or being possessed, I guess, by an abosom. So you go into some sort of trance. So that's what some people define akom as. And some people also said it meant to dance. And I guess I can see the connection because when you like watch videos of people in ceremony or in ritual, they do the dance of their particular abosom until they are, I guess, mounted by the abosom. And so I can see the connection there. But yeah, that's where akomfo comes from. So their job is to preserve and protect the religious and cultural traditions of the ancestors, and they play an essential role in ritual. So they lead in purifying rites and rituals during special festivals. They offer prayers and sacrifices to Abosom, and they also use their ancestors, and they also use their herbal knowledge to treat spiritual and physical illnesses. They can also remove curses, find the truth in a situation, reveal evil. And so how it works is that like an abosom descends on them in order to directly communicate with humans about their problems. So you would typically go to an akomfo to, for like divination purposes, that kind of thing. And you are called to be an akomfo. It's not really something you decide to become. I talked about it a little bit, season 5, episode 1, but some people say that they see visions, they hear certain things, they get ill, and then when they go to a particular akomfo and they are diagnosed, that's when like all the visions or illness stop, right? And so that's kind of one of the signs that you're being called. So once you're called, you undergo several years of training, about 3 years, that's what I read. And you learn about, the craft, including the abosom you're serving, their taboos, their dances, their songs, how to do divination, that kind of thing. Okay, so now let's talk about Nananom Nsamanfo. And Nananom Nsamanfo is the enlightened ancestors. And so basically when someone passes, their spirit goes to another place called Asamaindo, which means land of like the spirits. And they're then either accepted into Asamaindo or refused entry. And so because of this, not everyone who passes away is considered an ancestor. And it's because you must meet several criteria for that. And one of them is fulfilling your purpose in life, amongst other things. I'll talk more about purpose soon. And so those that don't become like an enlightened ancestor, Nananom Nsamanfo, wait to be reincarnated. So reincarnation is something that Asase Akans really believe in, right? And so that's where that comes from. And so Nananom Nsamanfo, they're respected and revered and venerated. They're not worshipped. We pay them the highest form of respect and honor. And they're not seen as bosom, they're different, right? Because of the life they lived on earth, they're very wise and, they're here to protect and guide us through life. And so that's the role that they play. And because of their new status as Nananom Nsamanfo, they acquire special insight, special foresight that allowed them to guide and protect us and see things that we don't necessarily see. And so we call on them, we invoke them by pouring libations, leaving offerings for them in the form of like food or drink, and naming our children after them. And so Nananom Nsamanfo, they're always with us, and it's really important to build a relationship with them and get to know them, just like your family members. When you build a relationship, you can ask them for assistance in your life, talk to them, engage them during prayer, etc. So that's Nananom Nsamanfo. Okay, so next, I want to talk about nkrabea and hyebre. So, in Akan spirituality, we believe that we all have a purpose in life. And two words that I kept seeing in my research related to this concept are nkrabea and hyebre. So I found that they were often used interchangeably and sometimes the meanings are switched. So I actually watched so many videos, read, also consulted some relatives and elders just to find like a conclusive meaning of those two words. Spoiler alert, I didn't really arrive at a conclusive definition, but I'll present what I personally learned. And so in general, the concept of nkrabea and hyebre discusses purpose, fate, destiny, and low-key, I feel like trying to translate it into English is kind of what has caused some of the confusion, but anyway. Okay, so some believe nkrabea means the place we said goodbye to Nyame, right? Before entering Earth and being born. Because nkra usually, in Akan language is like, saying goodbye, bidding farewell. It can also mean message. But yeah, that's where that definition comes from. Another meaning is nkrabea is the work we came here to do on earth. This is something we choose before coming on earth, and it's basically a promise to Nyame on what we came here to do. And because of this, some people believe that we can't change our nkrabea. It's fixed. And of course, as I said, there are people that have like different meanings and definitions. Some people did believe that you can change your nkrabea. Okay, now hyebre. Some people believe that hyebre is the path we take to do what we came to do on earth. It can also describe the circumstances and the life and the things we encounter on earth. So, example, our family members, how and when we pass, how we make money, what we go through in life. And we have hyebre with every reincarnation until we come to a state of wisdom and divine consciousness. So that was another definition that I really liked. I really like the concept of that. And so as you experience different lives and you go through a path of learning, Adomankoma, or like Nyame gives you Adom, which is grace, which can remove the negative aspects of your hyebre. And so, yeah, this is a great definition I found interesting. And some people also believe that hyebre can be changed, and others don't think it can be changed no matter what you do. So those are kind of like the different concepts and ideas that I found in my in the rabbit hole I went through trying to find the definitions of nkrabea and hyebre. But just in conclusion, there are many, many ideas floating around about the meaning of nkrabea and hyebre. And so for me, the takeaway is that we all have a purpose on earth, and there's a path that we take to fulfill our purpose. And we learn and figure out our purpose by, sitting with ourselves, reflecting on what we feel connected to, being in community with others who often recognize our strengths and what we're good at, and also being like spiritually connected. Okay, so yes, I hope you enjoy this. If you want to learn more, I would ask family members or any elders. A lot of this stuff is weaved into our culture. So even if people don't claim to practice, it's so embedded in the culture that there's like no way to remove it from our traditions and customs. Another way to learn more, like if you live in Ghana or you're able to visit Ghana, I feel like it's such a unique opportunity to learn about these customs and traditions right where they take place. Some of these are weaved into like nature sites. So, for example, Lake Booksurge and Tano, they are nature sites where people are there to kind of like educate you and also Bruku in the eastern region. There are tours there, that kind of thing. So you can go to those nature sites and honestly just be in that environment and learn more there. You can also read the sources I provided in the episode notes. All of the references I used are there. Okay, so this was the last episode of season 5. Thank you so much for listening to this season of Asase Ba. I really want to thank everyone who supported this podcast by sharing and engaging. It just makes me so happy to see that, and I'm very proud of this season. I really hope you enjoyed it as well. And of course, I'll be back next year for another season. And so if you want to keep up with Asase Ba while we're on a break and learn any updates, you can check out our website, asasebapod.com, and also follow on social media. Follow on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at asasebapod, and keep the conversation going. What do you know about your traditional spirituality? What would you like to learn? #asasebapod. Thank you so much once again, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.